Now, if you live in Bexley, stick around to get the latest news and updates across the borough. Now, there are a few interesting things happening across Bexley at the moment, so I thought I'd pull them together into a quick local update. So let's start with Erith, because this is one of the more interesting local stories. Now, Riverside Gardens is reopening in stages this summer after a major refurbishment. Now, the plans include new seating, a playground, an outdoor fitness area, community gardening, and a new community space called 68, which is due to include a kitchen, meeting rooms, event space, and a changing places toilet. Now, that might not sound dramatic, but I think it really matters. Erith has had a lot of attention around regeneration over the last few years, and the Riverside is one of its biggest assets. So if that area becomes more usable, more attractive, and generally more welcoming, then it can only be good for residents, good for local businesses, and good for how people feel about Erith as a whole. And that last bit is really important, because areas do not improve just because someone builds a block of flats and calls it regeneration. They improve when people actually want to spend time there. So when the public spaces work well, families use them, and when businesses benefit, it can only be a good thing, right? So for Erith, this is definitely one to watch. So next we have Bexley. Bexley as a whole has quite a busy summer ahead. There are events coming up across the borough, including Erith Pride, Thamesmead Festival, Symphonic, Ibiza in Bexley Heath, Park Rock, Raver Tots, and Erith Made later in the year. And I know some people will hear that and think, well, that's just a few events, but these things do help. They bring people into the town centres and parks, they support small businesses, and they give families something to do locally. And that makes the borough feel a little bit more alive. Now, that's good for residents, but it also matters when people are thinking about moving into the area. The buyers are not just looking at floor plans, they're asking what the area feels like, where we can go at the weekend, and what is there for the kids to do, and does the town centre still feel active? Now, that is why local life matters. There is also some good news on the arts and culture side too. Now, Bexley has secured £100,000 of Arts Council funding for a new programme called Night Visions, which will run later in the year and use light, creativity and local art events across the borough. Now, I actually think this is the sort of thing Bexley could do with more of, because not every local improvement needs to be a huge development scheme. Sometimes it's about giving people a reason to go out, meet new people, see something different, and feel a bit more connected to where they live. And for a borough like Bexley, which can sometimes be a bit quieter than inner London, that sort of cultural activity can make a huge difference. It gives the area more identity, it creates talking points, it supports local arts and venues, and again, it makes the borough feel more active. Now, Bexley Heath Town Centre is another one to keep an eye on. Local businesses have voted to renew the BID, or Business Improvement District, for another 5 years. A BID is not the most exciting phrase in the world, but the idea behind it is very important. Now, it means local businesses working together to support the town centre through events, promotion, business support, and improvements to the local environment. And town centres need that now more than ever. People don't just go shopping because they have to anymore. So places like Bexley Heath need more reasons for people to visit. Food, events, services, family activities, local businesses, and a high street that feels like it still has a purpose and is still thriving. Now, that matters for business owners, it matters for local residents, and it matters for property and local homeowners, because town centre confidence is part of what people buy into when they're looking for a new home. Now let's move to the wider economy. Now, the Bank of England base rate is currently 3.75%, and inflation is still above target at 2.8%. Mortgage rates are also still a major factor for buyers at present. Now, the latest figures as of today show the average 2-year fixed mortgage rate with a 5% deposit sits at around 5.03%, and the average 5-year fix at around 5.01%, whereas the average 2-year fixed mortgage rate with a minimum 40% deposit sits at around 4.13%, and the average 5-year fixed at 4.17%. So rates are not at the worst levels we've seen, but they are still much higher than the ultra low mortgage rates a lot of people got used to. And that is changing behaviour locally. Buyers in Bexley are still active, but they are careful. They're looking at monthly payments, they're comparing properties properly, and they're asking more questions. And if something feels overpriced, they do move on quickly. Now, at the same time, the latest ONS figures show the average price of a home bought with a mortgage in Bexley was 415,000 in April 2026. Now, that's up from 405,000 a year earlier. So Bexley's not fallen off a cliff, but it's not a market where sellers can be casual either. That is probably the most honest way to put it. There is demand, but it's selective. Good homes are still selling, but homes that are priced sensibly, presented properly, and marketed well are still attracting buyers. But homes with hopeful pricing, poor photos, weak marketing, or no clear strategy are finding it much harder. So, my takeaway this week is this: there are some genuinely positive things happening locally. Erith's riverside improvements are definitely worth watching. Bexley has a busy summer of events. The arts funding is a good sign for local culture, and Bexley Heath Town Centre is getting continued support. Now, the wider property market is still improving, even if buyers are more cautious than they were. So, if you're a homeowner in Bexley, the message is not to panic, but it's also not the time to guess. You need to understand the market around you, price properly, present your home well, and make sure your marketing gives people a reason to pay attention, because in this market, attention is everything. If you're thinking about moving, or you just want a straight view on what your home might be worth in the current market, feel free to get in touch, and don't forget to drop me a follow for more Bexley news, local property updates, and honest market advice. Now, that's it for this week. As always, I'm Aaron. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. Take care.